You already shared?
Yeah, it's going live right now. It's loading right now. It's live on Facebook.
All right.
Good evening, everyone. We will be starting in 3 minutes. Thank you for your patience.
Seems like it's a whole bunch of people.
You think I don't say anything bad about you?
There go Reese, the legend. Go ahead there.
He made it.
Yeah, he made it.
Man, yeah.
Man, your PO let you off, huh?
You pay this? Like,
What's up?
Huh? I'm doing that right now. That's what
Hey man, you had to break into the studio or what?
Man. Not with all these police on the phone, on the line. I plead the field.
What?
but they broke into the wrong tune.
Man, oh man.
What time is it, Curry?
We got 2 minutes.
Man, we live on Facebook, man. We should go ahead and run it, my guys.
Okay, well, we'll go ahead and run it. Since we got Reese on here, we're kind of waiting on Reese, so we'll go ahead and let Reese start the show, as he always do.
All right. First of all, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate y'all being a part of this situation, man. Everybody taking their time out. If you have a job to, you know what I'm saying, jump on this call, jump on the Zoom situation. Shout out all the people from the community, all the people from the media, and of course, my people in law enforcement out there and former law enforcement too. He knows who I'm talking to. That jumped up to this Zoom situation today. We got a few different topics that we're going to be going over. Everybody's going to get a chance to have a voice. Hopefully you use it, your time wisely. We definitely going to put the clock on some people. If you go over 2 minutes, then we got to cut you. Unless you're making a point, like the super point that nobody ever heard before, that we got to let you go 2 minutes and 15 seconds. And we're going to go ahead and let that thing slide. All right. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and hit these panel questions too. Go ahead. Once again, I'm Reese. I'll be the moderator for the day. If I cut you off, I still love you. I apologize if I hurt your feelings. But it's not about that. It's just about trying to get as many people on as possible. Shout out to all the founders in the building, especially my guy, Todd Dennis. I see a whole lot of familiar faces. OK Curry, not to be confused with Seth or Steph. We got both mics on. What's up, Mike and Mike? I see you, my boy Finney. A lot of good people on this situation. I see Book with the Pittsburgh insignia on there. I wasn't gonna shout you out just because of that. I'm not gonna lie to you. All right, it's a lot of other people on it. Dre, what's up, Dre? He probably on the crime scene right now. I ain't gonna call him out too much. We got a lot of good panel questions today. I guess we're gonna go ahead and run them. I know we got some students jumping on from Morehouse, so salute to all you guys. I did 2 semesters at Morehouse. We're taking my talents to Poly. But no love lost. I love y'all down there too. I will ask you guys too, please mute your situations until you're called upon. I'm gonna be calling people. Those guys that I just shouted out personally, they're able to call on people too. I will be having to get out of here early because I got another situation that paid me to be there, so I gotta be there in a minute. But they gotta wait right now because this takes precedence. All right. Before we get started, any questions from the main guys or panel guys? Pax, what's up, man? Still mad at you from that AT&T day. Really had people calling me a snitch. It's fine. Oh my God. All right. Anybody, we good to go?
We good, man. Let's roll it, man.
Okay, cool. And make sure I got these right panel questions that came from the AUC, right? That's it, or the other ones that you sent over, Ty?
I didn't send them over. Dre should have sent them over.
Dre sent them over. Okay. Oh, I got it.
Start with a generic question and read somebody to send them to you now.
Okay, appreciate that, man. So, hold on. I think Mike's got some real good questions too. All right. So, was anybody surprised to see that the guy that they apprehended at Publix was black? 1 and 2, that he made it out of there alive with all those guns. I ain't gonna lie.
Yeah.
I might have shot him myself. I ain't gonna lie.
I was happy that, honestly, I was happy that it ended the way that it did, and the fact that I don't care what race it is, but it's been common that with the other incidents by them being the other race,
right, people
feel like why they getting walked out and different stuff like that. So I hope that we put people don't continue to copycat the action of mass shooting and different things like that, because a lot of innocent people are losing their lives over nothing. So.
Right. I agree, man. All jokes aside, I agree. I was glad to see that the situation was being able to held without violence and without anybody else getting hurt too, from whatever that guy had on his mind. That was pretty cool right there. Natalie has her hand up, I think.
I was gonna say something. I thought what was crazy. Somebody asked me, said, it's like, hey, Carter, said, why they didn't, when the officer walked in or officers walked in on him, why they didn't shoot him then if he had all those guns and whatnot, which, I wasn't there. I don't know all the specifics around it, but I think with everything going on with, with black folks being shot and killed and whatnot for, I guess, less than what that guy was dealing with. It's began to raise a lot of questions from, just people out in the streets. So I think that's I don't know if anybody wants to chime in on what they're hearing from the streets and how people feel. Because what I told him is basically, if the guy is just standing there, or if he's not doing anything or trying to go for his weapons, or anything like that, then, especially, we're monitored anyway with the body cam. You can't just go in and start shooting. just because the guy has the guns. Because actually, what came out too is I don't know how true it was, but on the news said that he was a licensed gun owner.
Yeah.
As well. So trying to explain that to people, and then they say, well, a lot of people, other people have been legal gun carriers and not been in that same situation, and officers just automatically pull their guns on them. So just want to throw that out there.
Nah, that's a great point, Carter. Like you said, the streets basically been saying this is kind of a sigh of relief, like, oh dang, he's black and he didn't get killed and he had all them guns. That's what it is. But at the same time, it's like that should be the norm. If somebody isn't, they may look threatening, but not opposing the immediate threat, they should be able to take it in like that. You know what I mean? So I thought automatically, because it was in the city, I thought it was one of you guys that took him in, because I was like, okay, nothing happened. It must have been one of our guys. You know what I mean? Because you guys kind of got the pulse on really what's happening.
But at the same time, Reese, in that situation, man, it's easy. Like, basically, what we doing is Monday morning quarterback.
Yeah.
And it's easy to Monday morning quarterback a situation like that, whether you shoot or don't shoot.
Right.
I think in those other two situations, we don't know in Colorado if the officer was trying to do the same thing and the guy shot him. So it's one of those things where we get the after story of what happened and so forth and so on. When you're dealing with a situation like that, man, especially if you responding to a call when somebody just slaughtered multiple people, you don't know what you'll do, to be honest with you. You sitting there, for some, they might say, man, I'm gonna wait for backup. Even though our trainers say engage, you don't know what you'll do,
Right, absolutely. And that's why these are important, so we can get the perspective of both sides. But you're right. A lot of us look at these situations on Monday morning quarterback, or we looking at hindsight like, oh, I would have did this, I would have did that, but we do that in our own lives. Like, man, you know what I mean? Like off of little stuff. So
when you pull up on a car, man, and you hearing pop, 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 we be human beings.
Hey,
and
listen,
it's just like with anybody else.
If I pull up to the club and hear bop, 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 you know what I mean? My instinct's gonna be different than the trained officer. You know what I mean? Hey.
Well, I've had that happen at the club, and at the end of the day, the first thing you're thinking is survival. You're not, even though I'm a cop, I'm thinking, okay, where are those shots coming from? Let me get cover. Let me see who's shooting and so forth and so on. I'm analyzing the situation. I had an incident where my security jumped on top of me, and I'm like, get up, man. I'm the cop. You know what I'm saying? So
right.
you don't know. At the end of the day, you don't know what you'll do at the end of the day.
Right. All right, anybody, please feel free to raise your hand with the raise the hand feature, which I forgot where it was. Maybe Mike could fill us in, because I definitely don't remember. But or if you don't see it, just raise your hand regular, then I'll find you if your video is on. If the video ain't on and you don't hit that and I don't pick you, that's your fault. I'm just kidding. All right, we could go on to the next subject. We pretty much everybody heard about the Tennessee situation. I believe this is the one that everybody's been talking about the guy wrestling for the gun, right? Am I mistaken? That's it, right?
Yeah, we got the video, Reese.
Okay.
We want to watch. I don't know. I mean, what do y'all think?
Yeah. Let's go ahead and watch the video. Disclaimer: graphic situation coming up. Semi-violent situation. But the question that's about to come from this video is Tennessee. Would the outcome been different if the officer was in shape, although he is justified? So we can go ahead and play the video. Appreciate Mike on the technology.
Make sure we don't get hacked again.
Oh yeah.
I see them skippers he looking about though.
Right now, he's tasing the lady, right?
Yeah, but she reaching for a weapon herself at some point.
Right.
Clarence Campbell, can you please mute your phone?
It's a dash cam footage. I've been around y'all way too long.
Yeah, you even know you even
Getting the
got the lingo
terminology
now.
down pat.
Right.
I hear him. I see him. He out of breath, boy.
Yes.
He took a shot. That's why he out of breath.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
suspect discharged firearm. No, I was playing.
That's it.
Right. So
Go ahead.
basically, he was trying to get her to abide by the law. You can't hear the audio, but he was trying to get her to do whatever he was trying to get her to do. He tried to tase her first, and she actually shot this man. And he did not open fire. She shot the man. He fell to the ground, and she pulled off. Did she throw her gun? That's what it looked like.
I think her mag dropped,
Oh, okay. Well, she's definitely going to jail. Let's put it that way.
but she died.
She did?
Yeah,
Wow.
she died.
I did not know
Yeah,
that.
so the officer, he got some shots off. So she shot first. He returned fire. That was his gun you seen on the floor.
Okay.
She drives off and she tosses her gun a short while away and then crashes. And yeah, she didn't make it. She passed.
Okay. So that's another one of these situations where we, once again, everybody don't know all the information. We Monday morning quarterbacking, but at the same time, it's like, okay, see these situations where they say, oh, this person was unarmed, they didn't do this, they didn't do that. And then you see a situation where you're trying to tase this lady. She is up actually pulling a pistol and shooting this man. So he returned fire, like you guys said, and bygones be gone, bygones, we see what happened. So I guess the question is, do you think this would have been a different outcome if the officer was in shape? Now we are, and just to nitpick here, we talking about physical shape, right? Not mental shape.
Right.
All right.
I don't think it had anything to do with it.
Right.
I don't think it has anything to do with him being in shape. I think it was a situation where, he tried to use, some less lethal.
Yeah.
She kept refusing and whatnot. And finally, upon seeing that weapon, if you have to open it up and listen to the audio.
Yeah.
He pulled his weapon and did what he needed to do. So I don't think that had anything to do with him being in shape or not being in shape. So the question always comes around when we have these discussions is, okay, well,
Somebody got mutual phone man at the club.
people are quick to ask, well, why don't they just try to tase her again? Not that people have said that in this case, but in other incidents where we've had our community discussions and whatnot, people, well, why couldn't he just use his taser again, even if they know, okay, the person has a gun. So there's still that, I think, that misnomer in the public that they don't want the police to use deadly force, period.
Yeah.
And I think what he did was, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that's realistic, because if you're in a life or death situation, you're gonna choose life, and that's just what it is, in my personal opinion. And that's not the views expressed by Clippers and Cops. That was my personal opinion. Most people are going to choose life in a life or death situation, and you can see that right there. We got Clarence. Clarence got his hand up.
I guess looking at the video and understanding why he was in that position. Two things you can't do. You can't play boxing and you can't play police. You cannot play boxing because it's real in there. And you can't play police.
Right.
The reason why she got pulled over because the boyfriend was a dope boy. Yes, but when he got her out the car, at that situation, she should have been arrested and pulled to the side. But it was a nice moment. He was trying to do something different. But you found dope in her car. You found something to get him to get her arrested, so he waited. Poor tactic, running around the car. She's not that. Looking at her condition, she wasn't gonna run too far. So just get in the car door and let her run where she want to run. Just start some more cars.
Yeah.
So he just got It was I guess you say a panic situation where he thought he was gonna catch her and he couldn't even close her up in the door. And by this time, between the tasers, she went into a crisis mode and started shooting.
Yeah, I mean, I could kind of see that the ladder that he took, the steps he took was like regular arrest, this arrest, taser. All right, I gotta use this force. Appreciate that. Appreciate the insight, Campbell. Pax, what's up? Got your hand up.
Yeah, so I disagree with Carter. I think I watched the body cam first. The female turns and she immediately says, "All right, this ain't happening." She starts to take off and run around the car. So as I'm watching the body cam footage, I'm thinking to myself, how is he not able to catch her? Because she's not moving that fast. And he's kind of jogging behind her. Now he has no idea what she's going to grab for a gun. She probably really wouldn't have grabbed for the gun had he not been tasing her. She was probably trying to get away. If she was trying to kill him, I think she probably would have ran him over, which she could have easily done. So I think she was panicking. She grabbed the gun and shot at him. And ultimately that was her big mistake. But I think had that officer been in much better shape, he looks like he's obese, is just about as obese of an officer that I've seen. So he's in extremely bad shape. So if he was in better shape, I think the outcome could have been different. I don't want to say it would have been different because I don't know. His actions were absolutely perfect. I don't think there was any issue with any of his actions, other than he was a little hesitant to put hands on and go into arrest mode. So I think his physical fitness hindered the outcome of that.
I agree on that too. Had he been a little more in shape, he probably would have been able to keep her outside the car in the first place. I kind of get that plan. Like Campbell said, you can't play police, you can't play boxing, but if you're gonna be on that field, I think you're gonna have to, some people can move around with that type of weight. All right, we're gonna go to Craddock, then Booker. Craddock.
Hey, I think it was bad tactics from the beginning. Because she kept reaching in her car. She was reaching around way too much. And I mean, as a female, we like to think. I think that sometimes, it gets, vision gets clouded a little bit. We don't expect that from certain people. She was open and honest, like, no, it ain't his car. What's that have to do with me? She starts reaching. When she starts reaching, she could have went into cuffs at that point. You have to act sooner before things get out of hand later. Know if it necessarily had to do with his weight or if he was trying to play the nice guy or he don't want his face on the news. I don't know what it was, but it was bad tactics from the beginning. Running around the car, like they said, you don't run around a car. You stand stagnant, you find cover because you don't know what she has. She has a bag. She continuously goes back and forth to that bag. It's something in that bag she wanted. Then not only that, but he found a weed. He leaves the bag on the trunk, takes the weed to the car. The weed can stay with the bag. You can stay with the bag or the bag can go with you. It was bad tactics.
Gotcha. Appreciate that input. Booker.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, we kind of talked about this last night, and I kind of agree with a little bit of what both parties just said, but I also think that it's important to keep in mind the fact that his inaction was probably in large part due to the fact that it was a female, and you don't whether we should or we shouldn't. I've had encounters with females, and I can tell you right now, I'm not as quick to use all of my defensive tactics skills on a female as I am a male. Like I literally have to be punched in the face and be like, oh, she's not playing before I actually have to take her down. So that could be a huge factor into why he was kind of dealing with her with kitty gloves, why she was able to make it to the car, why he didn't snatch her out of the car and things of that nature, just because she's a female. And we tend to, handle women a lot different than we will men. I don't necessarily think that's a physical fitness thing. I don't think it is tactics. It is tactics, but it's also being human. And like the lady just said, like you don't want to be all on body camera or on someone else's cell phone slamming a female all over on the concrete.
Right.
You know, whether you ended up in a situation where you found guns, drugs, and everything else, you just don't want that, you know, to be the narrative, because ultimately that will become the narrative. And I think that played a factor based on the current climate that we're dealing with as far as policing. I think that his mindset was definitely on that more so than anything else. But that's just my opinion.
Appreciate that perspective. I do have a quick. I'm gonna bring it to Ty because he got his hand up. But I do have a quick question I want to bring up right after we go to Ty, which is gonna be from the police perspective and retired officers on the line right now on the Zoom. What goes into your mind frame after something like this? What happens with that officer? Like, what steps need to be taken? Because if he goes right back out there, right, we just on the outside looking out, be thinking that he might move a little faster next time, and that might not be the right thing. You know what I'm saying? Just based on the situation he went through. All right, but we're gonna go to Ty first. Ty, what's up?
I just wanted to, everybody pretty much is right in what they're saying, but it just goes to show you there's no such thing as a routine call, because in his mind, I think he had it in his mind, okay, this the boyfriend. And then once he seen it was the girl, like Booker said, I'm sure his guard let down. But like Craddock said, the girl was too freewheeling. She's on the phone, she's smoking a cigarette. Even when he about to take her into custody, she like, hey, come up here. Like, you know what I'm saying? He has to get control of that scene. And I think that goes back to tactics. But it goes to show you that from a cop standpoint, there's no such thing as a routine call. Nobody watching that video thought it was going to end up the way that it did, including that officer. And I think your second question of what does he do after that? I don't know. The routine of it is he's going to get 3 days off. He's going to probably go to psych services. And then if they feel he's fit for duty, he'll go back on and be back like ain't nothing happened. But you don't know how that affects. Everybody's affected differently by incidents like that. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Some people can have that happen and go back into service, and then some people, they need some time to get their mind back right.
Gotcha. Well, you have the fact that remember, he still got shot though. He got shot, so he's not going right back to work.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask. Is that typically enough? I'm just asking because I don't know, and I'm asking from you guys' perspective. I'm sure other people may want to know. Is that enough for you guys to be able to go back initially with the 3 days off, the psych evaluation, all that stuff? Is that enough for you guys to be able to go back and mentally be prepared to go do your job the next day? Keeping in mind, I understand everybody's different.
No.
Okay.
I'll jump in there.
Okay, Chief Armstrong, out man, the mud in the middle of it.
Yeah, hey man, I got to jump in late, man, or else Todd will never give me a chance to talk, man. When we in this
he always coming for me with that pink shirt on, bro.
Go ahead, my brother.
This is future. Ty. It's future. You're right now.
It's breast cancer awareness month. Fine, I got you, Doc.
But no, 3 days is not, and one of the things that we have to work towards getting away from is just having these set time periods in place and just thinking everybody fits into that box. Mm-hmm. And as leaders, it's incumbent upon us to really evaluate and look out for our people and just check on them to see how they're doing with things like this. Man, I had an officer one time that was shot in the line of duty. And, so he, once he was physically okay to come back to work, then you have to pass the psychological tests and meeting with the professionals in that space. And they cleared him to come back. But when he came back, got back to me was he was still struggling and he was still having problems. And so, man, once I learned about that, I sent him home and I put him back out. And man, I didn't with the professionals, had to say, and them saying that he was okay to be back. If that officer is telling me that they are not okay and they don't need to be back, then I'm going to have them out until, man, we all feel comfortable and they feel comfortable that they can be back out there, on the streets. And, we have to find ways to work, within that to make sure we're taking care of the people and getting them the help and services that they need, whether or not they're speaking out on it or not. And that's one of the things in our profession, A lot of people feel as though, man, they have to be macho, or it's, you know, you look down upon, man, if you need help or if you need time to be okay before you can get back in the swing of things. And so,
Right.
you know, one of the things, man, we got to look at it differently. And while everybody is different, and some people will be able to come back sooner than others, you know, man, we can't rely on just you know, a predetermined time period. Or just, you know, one level of checks and balances for one person to say, okay, they're good to come back, where the officer may not feel as though they're good to come back. We got to take that into account.
Makes a whole lot of sense to me. Everybody, even if you ever got a cold, they might be like, you got to stay away for 5. Well, COVID, they say 10 to 14 days, but that might not be the same for everybody. So I definitely feel what you're saying. Right now we're talking about the Tennessee situation. Ty, you got your hand back up, or is it still up from last time? I'll make sure I don't miss anybody.
Oh, it was just, how do I take it back now?
I have no idea.
Lower hand,
That's a
I
Mike,
see it.
that's a Mike question. Mike S question. There you go. All right. Help y'all's guy, man. Right now, obviously, we're tuned in with Clippers and Cops. Appreciate everybody jumping on. We're going over these different situations and different questions. We've gone from the armed gunman here in Atlanta to the Tennessee situation where an officer was shot and a lady lost her life. And we're talking about different ways that what it was obviously justified, but different ways that could have been handled, and was his shape being a cause of the way that it was handled. We also moved into the officer, like once something like that happens, what does that do? Also, I want to move into one other part of this, the narration. Does this give other people who are quick triggered on the force, does this give them a battery in their back? I don't know. You guys work around maybe some of these conversations, or seeing some of these conversations. Does it give those guys a battery in their back to say, see, that could have happened in this situation? To change the narrative that has been going so far is like, okay, stop shooting these people because they're reaching for cell phones or this or that. And the third, like to open the floor to that before we move to the next question.
Repeat that one more question.
I'm asking, when you see a situation like this, you see the body cam footage and you see that this officer was basically playing nice. You said, I think Booker said it perfectly, came in this thing with kind of kitty gloves on in the situation. We saw the lady reach for something, end up being a firearm, shoots a guy. Do you think watching this will give some other people a battery in their back to say, all right, maybe I should just shoot fast or use a deadly type of force quicker in these situations? Do you think that will maybe become the narrative?
I'll chime in on that. I think like every situation is different, and how that officer handled a situation might not be the same way another officer might handle that same situation. And okay, we could say if it was another female versus another male officer, how would that female officer handle that situation? And what would the outcome based on that female officer being maybe in the same type shape as the officer is in? So every situation is different. It doesn't allow you to say, based on that situation, I could have drawn for it. And like Ty said earlier, we cannot Monday morning quarterback someone who made a decision on that. Now, for him, the officers need to reevaluate, hey, how could this played out in a better situation? And like Booker said, he went to it nonchalantly. And most time when officers see male officers see female, they're like, okay, they're not that threatening, but you never know. Because like Ty said, you always want to see these.
Yeah.
Once you see these hands, I feel comfortable. So if I only see one and something is in somewhere else, a bag or a console or something, I have to make a decision at that point, what is in that other hand that might cause me a problem? And I think all officers face that we all talk about these hands. The hands, as long as you can see them, to me, there is not a threat. Just depend on distance and other things that play a factor in that as well. So we have to look at that situation. Sad as it might be, it happened. She made a choice. He reacted to the choice that she made. And the outcome for him was, yes, he got shot. He had a vest on, which kind of protected him a little bit more. For her, it was fatal. She was able to drive away, and you did make a statement. She could have drove over him.
Right.
She could have, because she was at the advantage point. He laying on the ground. She could have drove, but she didn't. She drove away, and the consequences for her was fatal on that.
Nah, absolutely. Appreciate that perspective, Curry. Thank you. Like I said, if anybody wants to chime in, make sure you raise your hand to see more people jumping on the Zoom. We were talking about the situation out in Tennessee before we roll on to the next one. Campbell.
Yeah, I go back to training. I go back to training. It's just really, was he trained like that? And it's like some people are not trained that way, and you drop that red flag, and you see the red flags constantly being dropped into. Number one, when you get them out the car, if it's traffic charges, it's traffic charges. But when you get them out the car, you find dope, it's arrest.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Chief Armstrong, you got your hand up.
So, man, that situation is a prime example of why when we see something happen where, you know, an officer is involved in a shooting and we, you know, we feel as though it's a bad shooting and people, you know, want to see immediate changes in laws and different things come down. That's the flip side of it. That is the other side of that coin. And that shows why it's so hard for things to change and to try to fit everything into one box as we try to do, you know, with the reform efforts, you know, that a lot of people want to see, because these situations, you know, they're rapidly evolving. That comes from the Supreme Court. And that's why the Supreme Court, the ruling that governs us, but how we use force, that's what it talks about, is just how quickly these situations evolve, how quickly they escalate or de-escalate, and just, you know, how rapidly, man, how fast we have to make decisions. And so, you know, for every instance where, you know, there is excuse me, a quick decision that's made and where it's involving a shooting, where let's say the person did have a phone or something like that, you know, there are just an equal amount of instances where, you know, the officer was more reserved and not so quick to jump to force or escalate to that level. And we see officers get shot or we see officers get hurt. And so, you know, all officers, you know, watch videos and see videos like that all the time. You know, it's something that's ingrained in law enforcement. And so we all carry, you know, some of that trauma of watching to see what has happened to others. Some of us have lived through it and we've seen it, you know, with some of our partners. Some of us may have lived it directly ourselves. And so, you know, to speak to your question, Reese, when you're saying, you know, is that in the back of your mind the next time you go into that situation? Absolutely it is. Okay. Absolutely it is. And that's where, you know, the training plays a big part, and being properly trained and having that, you know, at the forefront. But you absolutely go into those situations just thinking like, man, you know, one of my partners or you know, I just saw this video of this just happened. And you know, every officer wants to make it home at the end of their shift. And you know, being put in some of these, you know, just unpredictable situations. That's why we see some of these play out. That's why it's so hard to just nail down and say, okay, we're going to change this. And if we make this one change, this will prevent this from happening. That's why we haven't seen anything really change over all of these years, because this is the other side of the coin. And it's not that simple to just put all these things in the box and say, if we make this one change, we can prevent this from happening at all costs.
I understand that completely. I mean, we do that in everyday life, even when we come down to dating. It's like, okay, that Libra, I ain't doing that no more. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, you still try to keep an open mind on people and not try to, you know, justify down to one thing. So I definitely understand that. All right, man, we're gonna move on to this next question. If I can get to it. Feel free to help me out, fellas. All right, here we go. Next question is about mass shootings. We've seen an uptick in those. I think we had like 10 or 9 or 10 in the U.S. since January this year alone. Mass shootings. Should we say something if we see something suspicious? Basically, see something, say something. And do certain people get handled differently? If so, why? We can go ahead and open up the floor around that. So I guess we're saying if you see something, say something. Are we asking, because I didn't come up with this question directly, are we asking, is that fall under a snitching type situation, or is it? Are we talking about, hey, we may not say something because we don't want to jump the gun on the situation and escalate it for no reason?
I think. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't have my hand up. My bad. Go ahead and you can get. I think it's Big Adam got his hand up.
Yeah, you wanted the panelists. You don't always have to.
Yeah.
raise
So
your hand,
what I would say to that right quick is that I don't think it is even close, remotely close to anything with young people or just people out in the communities talking about snitching. Because if you think about it, I know it's something that we've asked people that when we've had these discussions in the past, that same question when it comes to, well, what if your family is around, or are you concerned about your own safety enough to say something? If you see something going down, are you just going to leave? If you look at that young man that that decided to come forward and go get a worker and have them call police, man, if he hadn't said anything, we could be talking about something totally different today. So I don't think it falls anywhere near the snitching, quote unquote, culture that people talk about.
Nah, it makes plenty of sense, Carter. I felt the same way. That's why I asked it in two part, because I wasn't sure. But Big Sam got his hand up. Go ahead. Yeah, unmute your
Big Adam.
Big Adam, my bad. Big Adam. I'm thinking about the East Side Boys. Big Adam. Unmute your phone.
Yeah, I just feel like when it comes to mass shootings, if you see anything suspicious, it's snitching is thrown out the door, because we're at the point now in society where, it's starting to become more regular, and we need to protect our people, not just Black people, not just white people, Asian, whatever. We just need to be on the lookout, because it's becoming a more common thing.
Yeah.
So at this point, all the officers on the street, they're all reacting to mass shootings. We can't prevent it. There's no way in the world we can prevent a mass shooting. We're only the officers are only reacting to a mass shooting. So at this point, the whole snitching thing needs to be thrown out the door. Whatever you see that might be suspicious could save a lot of lives. And at this point in time, we're at that point where we need to be preserving all life. So if anything goes down, you see anything suspicious, whether it turns out to be something or not, we're at that point where we just need to speak up and say something. It's better to be safe than sorry. So what that gentleman did was totally, justifiable. And as far as being able to try to prevent, more killings, that's just something that we need to be on the lookout for. And it's just, community policing. As a community, we need to be on the lookout for anything that might be suspicious.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that too. When it comes down to family, that guy that was just apprehended from the Cherokee shootings, where the guy was shooting up the spas, his family was actually the people that called the police on him. So they knew he was a danger in that situation. So they needed to get him off the street. So I understand that too. Anybody else want to chime in on this situation?
Hello, I want to say something, and I just don't know how to raise my hand. I apologize.
Half of us don't. It's fine. Go ahead.
I've been looking for the thing to raise my hand for literally the past 10 minutes. I can't see it.
Okay, what's your name?
My name is Audrey Washington. I'm with Channel 2. Michael Seiden. I'm going to blame him. He's he's the one that sent me this invite. But one of the questions, and just full disclosure, I'm from New York. I'm the daughter of a NYPD officer for 20-some odd years, and my question is something that actually got brought up during one of our morning calls at Channel 2. Was the conversation about how people who are the perpetrators, and I'm just going to put it out there, how they get taken into custody when the perpetrator is white versus when the perpetrator is Black, Middle Eastern, blah, 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 blah. And I just wanted to hear some other people's thoughts on that, because that is something, and I know just covering, excuse me, covering the Asian spa rallies that happened this past week, speaking with a lot of people, from Black Lives Matter to when the insurrection happened to the Asian shootings. I heard it over and over and over again from our viewers. Okay, so this guy who, so shooting up these spas, killing 8 people, when we see his mugshot, he's in a bulletproof vest. Dylan Roof was taken to Burger King at the someone's not on mute. I'm sorry.
Please, somebody, if you got your thing not muted, please mute it so the lady that has the floor can get her.
Thank you. I would just like to get some of the officers' response to that, because that's a serious question that gets brought up all the time. It's a glaring image that you can't help but see. When when I thought about when I saw Boulder, Colorado happen, the first thing that popped into my mind was that boy Elijah, who was killed a few miles south from all understanding, was walking down the street. And now that has become a huge case. So this boy who's walking down the street is dead. A guy who walks inside a grocery store and kills 10 people is alive. So I'm just I'm posing a question because I really would like to get some reaction to this, because this is a serious question that gets asked all the time. Why is it when a perpetrator is white, he's not only arrested a certain way, A, but then B, referred to a certain way, hence having a bad day? So I would like to get a reaction to that. And that's it.
Gotcha. Pax, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I think a lot of that is media spinning it the wrong way. So the large majority of mass shooters are white. The suspects are white. When they're not white, a lot of times when there's mass shootings in the hood, you don't even hear about it. When I was on patrol, there was a mass shooting at Farrell High. Barely made the news. I think 4 students were shot right outside the high school. No national news. The shooter's taken into custody. He's not killed. The Boston bombing suspect, he was Middle Eastern. He was not killed. The DC sniper, he was not white. He was not killed. So a lot of that mass shootings, vastly white suspects, no question. A lot of times there's no shootout. They give themselves up. From a law enforcement standpoint, we have body cameras. So this past one, the guy that shot up the Asian spa, if he gives up and doesn't present a physical threat that meets that level that we need to address it and put him down or use deadly force, we can't just use deadly force. We have body cams on. Almost all law enforcement agencies do. So we want to take care of those situations. I don't understand why the media portrays it that way, but I just don't see what point you're trying to make.
Well, I'll respond to that. I don't think it's a media spin. I think with all respect, I think you got to relay the facts, because my question is this.
Right. I agree. And what I'm asking for is if you can give any facts of mass shooters that weren't white who were met with deadly force and lost their lives.
What I'm saying, but I think the issue behind it, and again, sir, to your, in all due respect, I'm just telling you what a lot of people who are on the street at these rallies, what they are asking me. So I'm just relaying it. What I've heard is, look at, and forgive me, I forgot his last name, but I know his first name is Elijah. The young man, Elijah, walking down the street, in Colorado. The question is, well, what was he doing? But he's dead. So it doesn't even have to be like a mass shooting thing. It could be like some of these instances that should not result in dead. These people are dead. And so they're I think that the question, and again, I don't think it's a media spin. I think it's a fair question. If you look at what happened in Cherokee, that is a fair question. When people, why did the PIO say he was having a bad day? And that offended a lot of people. And so I think it's a fair thing to ask, where it's like, okay, I'm not even talking about necessarily mass shooting. I'm talking about when the perpetrator is white, and I know race is a sensitive question, but I think it's, this is something people are talking about. When the perpetrator is white and committed this heinous crime versus when they are not. So it doesn't even have to be a mass shooting. It could be as simple as again, that example in Colorado, where it's a Black boy walking down the street and now he is dead for walking. We're all retrospect, he was walking down the street.
It's but you're referring to the Elijah McClain situation.
Yes, that's his last name. Thank you so much. Elijah McClain. So, I mean, I think it doesn't necessarily have to be a mass shooting. That's what I'm trying to say, RJ. It could just be in any case. And I don't think it's a media spin. The media, responsible media, has to tell it exactly the way the facts lay out. And
can I chime in? Let me chime in.
Hold on one sec, because I'm in the media and I hear the narrative, and then it's kind of up to you as a person. I've seen Mike do this personally. Ms. Audrey, I'm sorry, I don't know you personally, but I've seen Mike do this. I've seen Mike take a story and really say it how it is, and I've seen the rest of the stations around say a certain type of narrative, like when a Black kid gets killed, you pick the craziest picture you can outside in the media, you know what I'm saying, the posts. But I've also seen responsible people, like you say, nah, this kid was a graduate, he was this, he was that, he was this. When it comes down to that, I think it's two parts you're asking though, and I do understand you on the front line speaking to those people, but it's kind of like a two-part situation. You got a police officer that said the dumbest thing in the world was saying this guy was having a bad day. No, he was a terrorist at that point, because he went in 3 different establishments and killed almost 10 people. You know what I'm saying? So, and dramatically affected the lives of everybody attached to them. That was the stupidest thing in the world that someone could have said about that situation. I do agree with that. But at the same time, I think media has a lot to do with the play of the after play. And Mike, I'm sorry, I see you unmute. Go ahead, bro.
Let me go. Go ahead, Mike.
No, I just want to say one. Go ahead. You go first. I'll follow. Go ahead. Go first.
Well, in my opinion, most mass shooters are cowards, and I think as the cavalry shows, they're making sure that they're giving up to a point where, from like Paxton was saying, as an officer, we can't just go in there and he down, shoot him, whatever. Now I get your point in what you're saying in reference to the different Black lives that have been lost to law enforcement, but those are different situations. And basically what Paxton was saying is, show me a mass shooter of color that was gunned down while giving up, basically. You know what I'm saying? Usually a mass shooter that is constantly still shooting and different things like that, then he's basically, you have to neutralize the threat. And so I think to compare the two, it's not the same. Elijah McClain, that's a sad situation across the board, because once again, he wasn't doing anything. You know what I'm saying? Just like if you look at every incident that's happened, each situation is totally different. But on the flip side, I think the wordplay and the supervisor, the PIO that was speaking on the spot shooting has since been removed from his position, because at the same time, he was insensitive in what he said. That was just being stupid. Right. I don't think that has anything to do with being a police officer. That's just being insensitive to, you think he having a bad day? Think about the people that just lost their life.
Right,
you know
insensitive and ignorant to what's going on around them.
Right, that's just being stupid and not knowing how to do your job. But on the flip side, I know a mass shooter, most mass shooters, once they're done doing what they're doing, or once the cavalry gets there, they spreading out, they making sure that there's no way possible, because they really didn't want to die. if they wanted to die, usually they're gonna go out in a blaze. Most of those guys are cowards.
So let me just say two things on Audrey's point. So, and I'm glad you guys brought this up because everybody always likes to blame the media. Why are you showing this kid's picture as graduation and you're showing a mugshot? So it's kind of in a way, I'll use an analogy, kind of like detectives when you guys investigate shootings or any kind of crime, right? So we hear about a crime, we go into the neighborhood, we start knocking on doors, we're asking questions. Hey, what happened? Can you tell us? I don't know anything. I'm not telling you anything. I'm not telling, like, if we have a job to do, right? We got to tell a story. I mean, I can speak for Audrey, I can speak for myself, I can speak for most of the people at my station. We do our due diligence. We go above and beyond. I even tell mothers and fathers, listen, if you guys don't give me a picture, I'm going to have to use his mugshot. And I know that doesn't define his whole life. But at the end of the day, we got deadlines. And I'm not saying it's right, but just like everybody on here, you all have bosses and you have things you have to get done. It's the same. I mean, we deal with the same stuff. Like, I'm not comparing my job to a police officer, but you guys all say, like, you go into these communities and there's, someone's house got sprayed, but nobody saw anything. Nobody heard anything. Like, it's frustrating as hell. I don't want to portray somebody with their mugshot. It's terrible. But sometimes that's all we can get. And I think the point, and Audrey, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the point you were trying to bring up was the fact, and maybe it is apples to oranges. Okay, so we look at a white mass shooter and how he's treated, but then there may be a crime somewhere else, and why is a black teenager ending up dead who maybe had some weed in his car versus this white guy who just shot up, this terrorist who just shot up, killed 10 people. Why is he still, breathing? And I think that's a fair question. But I guess the question I would push back with police is that, anybody on here who's used force or knows somebody who uses force, is it based on race or is it based on somebody not complying? Is it based on your training? I don't know the answer to that, so I'd throw that out there.
Right. And Mike, what I was saying was earlier, I was saying I know you do your due diligence because, like, you'll hit me and ask me, hey, this person, can you get me in touch with? Like, I know you're trying to get the best depiction of the situation before you break a story, so we appreciate that. People like you that take their job responsibly. We got 3 people with their hand up. I think I had Adam Curry and then Robert. So we're gonna go with Adam first.
All right. Well, I think one of the issues is that the media is so social media reliant. Because Facebook and Instagram is so prominent with how we get news, they seem to feed off of what social media is saying before getting facts. So with that being said, if the facts aren't getting found out first, then 90% of the time, it seems like the media is going off of what they're finding off of social media, because that seems to be the platform that's being used to garner these stories. Now, I might not be 100% right, but it just seems like the facts or the stories that are being portrayed don't come from reliable sources all the time. And because of that, with what's being portrayed on social media is what makes it to the media, which shows the stories of what's going on. So I just think that, I do know that news reporters or journalists, they do their due diligence to find out what they need to find out to make sure that they're giving the correct story. But I also do know, because I have family members who work for, I'm sorry. I do have family members who work for the media, Channel 2 and Fox 5. And I know how they get their stories. And I've heard things of how stories are put together and the influence of the higher ups making sure that, hey, you got to get this story, whether you get all of the truth or not. I know how it works. So that's what I was saying with the social media. it seems like a lot of times it drives the story of what gets portrayed on the media.
If you guys just jumping on, or if you're on the Zoom and you're not currently have the floor, please mute your situations, mute your Zoom, so make sure there's no interruptions. Appreciate that, Adam. I'm gonna move on to Curry.
I'm gonna let Robert go ahead on because he hasn't said anything, and so go ahead, Robert. Then I'll come back after Robert.
Okay, Robert, you got the floor.
Yes, sir. I'd just like to say there's a lot of things that have been said that people say things over and over again that are just not true. And after a while, people take them as being the truth. And a good example, a lot of people believe they took Dylan Roof to McDonald's. That's not true. Was Dylan Roof given food? Yes, he was given McDonald's. But why was he given food? You want to interview that person afterwards. You want to find out, was he part of a larger stuff conspiracy? Were there other people involved? Do they have more acts planned? You know, you want to make him comfortable. You want to keep him talking. I think the same thing happened with the guy at the spa shooting. He gave a post-arrest confession. That's what you want. You want to keep that person talking. But it's very hard to refute when somebody's coming from an emotional point of view. There's no facts that you can tell them to counteract that. And there's a widely held belief, you know, what Ms. Washington said, that, hey, the black suspects get killed, the white suspects, you know, get taken into custody with no problem. Well, you know, when we're talking about a mass shooter, first of all, a lot of people don't know what a mass shooter is. They define it differently. How the FBI defines it, you know, they've killed 4 more victims. And I think most of us in law enforcement would agree that the majority of the perpetrators, the vast majority, black or white, who commit violent crimes are taken into custody alive. You know, they're not killed. That's actually pretty rare, you know, whether the suspect is black or white, you know, but there's that perception which is very hard to overcome. You know, a lot of people who commit heinous crimes are taken alive. And I think Ty said that, hey, a lot of these people are cowards, and it's easy to kill somebody who's unarmed. But when they're confronted with armed law enforcement officers, they're very quick to give up. So it's just that it's, you know, when people have a perception and they're coming from an emotional point of view, really there's no facts that you can present them with that's going to counteract that, because people just believe what they're going to believe. And that's unfortunate.
That's a great point, Mr. Robert. I appreciate that, man. You're right. A lot of people that are emotionally charged, you can't get any words in. And even if you say something that makes total sense, they're still going to combat with from their emotional standpoint. Megan, okay. I've seen you on like 10 of these. This is the first time you speaking. Everybody mute your phone. You got the floor.
So a couple of things. I would say that attempting to compare mass shootings with, let's say, sort of general arrests is like a false equivalency. While there obviously is an emotional component to people's perception about law enforcement interactions, there are some statistics that bear out and give some basis to that statistically speaking, while perhaps we can globalize and say the majority of suspects, no color involved or no background involved, are taken into custody without incident. When you look at the suspects that are taken into custody where there is an incident, statistically speaking, when you compare Black suspects, regular crime, white suspects, regular crime, the Black suspects, statistically speaking, tend to have more incidents of being harmed upon apprehension. And I think that that's maybe what Audrey was trying to get at. The comparing mass shooters to regular crimes or arrests, I think is a false equivalent. First of all, most of the mass shooters, as you've already addressed, do tend to be white. And some of the factors that go into their behavior is, you know, it's different than sort of an average street crime kind of thing. But statistically speaking, when we are looking, if we take X number of quote unquote regular white criminals that are being arrested versus X number of quote unquote regular criminals of color, the criminals of color are statistically speaking at a greater risk of being harmed. And I don't think it's fair, if I'm being very direct, to dismiss people's concern about that as merely emotional and not wanting to hear facts are facts kind of thing, because ultimately there are some facts that bear that out. And I think we need to be respectful. Like, I think what Audrey was trying to get at, and I don't know her, I can't speak for her, but I think what she was trying to get at is that concern, that if everything, let's say that all else is equal about the crime involved, okay? If you've got a black suspect versus a white suspect, or a suspect of any color versus a white suspect, statistically speaking, especially in certain situations and unfortunately in certain areas, the suspects of color are statistically more likely to have injuries or death. I think that's what she was trying to get at. And it is a fair question, and it is a concern of the community, and it is something that I think should be addressed without being dismissed as just an emotional response or media spin or anything like that, because there is some kernel in there that is accurate.
I agree. I think that it is, because I've had this conversation on air a few different times. It seems to be disproportionate, whether it's being covered that way or that's being the actual facts. It does seem to be disproportionate, but I do think it's twofold though. You got one side where you have brown and black people being hurt in the same type of situation where maybe a Caucasian person doing the same thing didn't happen, and that's being publicized. And on the other side, you got a narrative of the actual victim or the shooter in some case, where it seemed to may have some media spin to it. So I think it's kind of a two-part situation in the case that Audrey brought up in the first place. I appreciate your perspective on that. Anybody else want to chime in before we move on? I really appreciate everybody chipping in on this situation. It really helps to drive the conversation. And we do have a lot of officers, whether they're speaking up or actually being a part of the panel on here. So it's really good for them to hear you guys' perspective. And that's what it's all about. I got Mike and I got Booker. I don't know who had their hand up first. Y'all can arm wrestle over it.
You can go first, Booker. That's fine.
No, I was just gonna just kind of do a recap of what we're talking about here. And it just occurred to me that, you know, we just left the time where, you know, a lot of Black people were dying because of see something, say somethings from white people. And, you know, we can recall several incidents where, you know, someone thought someone was doing something suspicious, turned out that they wasn't, and they were killed. And now we're in a situation where we're gravitating towards, you know, having to adjust to these mass shootings. And, you know, we're being encouraged to, you know, see something and say something again. So it's like we're kind of like, you know, damned if we do, damned if we don't, because we can't forget the fact that, you know, sometimes officers may overreact and it might be nothing based on someone's suspicion of what a person is or isn't doing, just because they're not familiar with or comfortable with what they're seeing. So we have to be careful in how we, you know, how we kind of adjust to the times, so to speak.
Understandable. I appreciate that, Booker. Mike?
I just want to say one thing to close this out, and then I'll shut up. First and foremost, like, we have these, at least in our newsroom, and Audrey can speak to this, we have these conversations. I mean, and that's why it's so important to have diversity in the newsroom, because, you know, how I may look at something is going to be completely different than Audrey, right? I mean, like, I can try to understand her point, but I'm not going to feel the way she feels, right? So we have these conversations. Now, the idea to think that the media doesn't fuck up, yeah, we miss the mark sometimes. But I think the important thing is that you have this conversation and you learn from your mistakes on how things are portrayed. And I've never worked in a newsroom where we say, oh, let's go after some, you know, certain group and let's make them look bad. But sometimes we just do something and you go back and look at it and you go, whoa, that wasn't right. It came out the wrong way. second thing I wanted to hit on is because everybody keeps bringing up social media. And that's been like a double-edged sword for journalism, because there is pretty much right now, if you have a smartphone, you are a journalist, right? I mean, you can document anything right now. And that's been the most frustrating thing. You got to look at where your sources are coming from, because so many people have, you know, their own agendas. I mean, go watch CNN for an hour, then go watch Fox News. I mean, it's like you're on a different planet. And so my thing is that I think everyone, whether you're a civilian, law enforcement, whatever you do, if you're going to be a responsible citizen and you're going to engage in these types of conversations, I think you have to do your due diligence. You cannot take people's, like, I mean, because there's so much misinformation, and like Ty always says this, we live in a soundbite culture, and it's true. Like, you know, how many times do we take just 15 seconds of something, and just like that, I mean, everybody's already jumped to conclusion, and then 6 months later, the rest comes out, and you're like, holy shit, it's a whole different perspective. So I think you just have to value, I mean, you just have to look at where your information is coming from. But again, I agree, like, just like in any organization, entity, like, we miss the mark sometimes. We're not perfect, no one's perfect. And I'm sure there's police officers on here that said, hey, the way I handled a certain situation, you know, I screwed up. That was not the proper way. Excuse me. But I think at the end of the day, the most important thing on both sides is, if we're demanding growth, we can't also demand perfection. And what I mean by that is that, yes, there are some things that there's no coming back from, there's no excuse. But there are also other things, situations that if you want people to evolve, you gotta let them grow. Instead of, you can't have growth and demand perfection at the same time. That's just my opinion. Anyway.
Great opinion. And what you said about perspective is key, because even when I believe Robert was saying earlier about the guy Dylan that they took to McDonald's or whatever, the narrative on social media and everybody was, oh, they took him to McDonald's and he killed all those people. But it makes total sense now what you're saying, that, hey, they were trying to get this guy to talk to make sure there's not a bigger plot going on. It's not going to be any more situations stemming from that. He might have the information. So I never even thought about that perspective.
Let me chime in on that also. We don't know how long they was chasing this guy. You know what I'm saying? I've had an instance where we hit a search warrant at 6 o'clock in the morning. We on the warrant until 1 o'clock. And when I had somebody in the car with me in custody, we went to Chick-fil-A. And when I saw no, I'm just saying though, it's one of the things where I'm hungry. Even though that man or whoever is in custody, they still a human being. Gotcha. And even though Dylan, whatever his name is, just slaughtered those people and he's a savage, at the end of the day, they probably ate too, and probably like, you know, we don't know. We wasn't there.
Yeah, and let's not downplay the role that Hollywood plays in a lot of this stuff. I mean, there's just so many outside influences now, and I'm not using it as an excuse, but I think that's important when you talk about these interactions, is the role that Hollywood plays. And,
absolutely.
I mean, it is what it is, right? I mean, that's the situation we're in right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but if I can just chime in, and again, I apologize because I can't raise my hand, but just optically speaking, it first of all, it was Burger King, not McDonald's. It was Burger King, and it's a fact. It was Burger King, and just optically speaking, it just doesn't look good. I'm just saying, like, just what the last woman, I believe her name is Megan, said. When you see the mugshot of these Black or brown kids who are truly kids, let's be honest, 16, 17, truly kids, 14, with black eyes and a busted lip, and think about the juxtaposition of a Dylan Roof who had Burger King, or the juxtaposition of Robert Long who's in a bulletproof vest. That is what people are talking about. And I do think it's a fair assessment. It's a fair discussion to have. Listen.
Absolutely.
I'm glad any suspect who's accused of doing a heinous crime is in custody and the crime has ended and that person is charged. I'm glad anytime I see that. But I do think it is a fair discussion to have when you say that, hey, when the 14-year-old Black or brown robs Quick Trip, and you see his mugshot and he has a busted lip and two black eyes, and you see this guy who doesn't look like that kid who robbed Quick Trip, you know, with a full belly and a bulletproof vest on. I do think it's a fair discussion. And I don't think the media is spinning that. And, you know, just to what Michael was saying, just really quickly, and I'll be done. There is a lot of accountability. Listen, I can't speak for the other stations in this market, but, and Michael will agree with this, I know, to get to WSB, you have to be a really good reporter to get to WSB. They don't just accept anybody. There is not only due diligence on our part, there's a lot of accountability within our own newsroom. If we mess up, we really mess up, and we are held accountable. So it's not just depending on social media or whatever, we do everything possible to get that story right. And my God, if we mess that story up, you know, like it is a big deal. So I just wanted to make that point.
Real quick, I know that I appreciate you bringing it up, because we all have to look at perception, how we do things differently. And this is what we are bringing this platform to give people the opportunity to say, okay, this is what I feel. This is how I feel. It doesn't make it wrong. It doesn't make it right. It makes what that person's perception is at that time. Just like this, well, I was hungry, I decided to go, but the perception is, okay, you fed this person this after he did a heinous crime. And I think we have to go back and we have to look at it, just like Mike said, that, you know, the media plays a role, social media plays a role, then Hollywood plays a role into how a lot of things, you know, we see things, perceive things. And, you know, I just, you know, watched the movie Just Mercy, and how that person was never given the opportunity because of the color of his skin, and based on what a white person said, and recanted his statement several times, still did not want to give him the justice that he was due. And that is perceived by a lot of Black people or people of color, that we don't get the benefit of the doubt. That's what we want, the benefit of the doubt, but we don't get that. We are sometimes found guilty before we could even prove our innocence. And so that is a big problem. We got to look in the mirror. White America got to look in the mirror. Black America got to look in the mirror as well and say, hey, how do we make it? And, you know, we got explicit bias, we got biases, we got all these biases. How do we come together to make it fair? And that's what it's supposed to be, but it's not. It's not. It's not. Just be real. It's not. So we'll judge very quickly, but sometimes we really have to go back and look at the reality of what was the narrative and who created that narrative.
I absolutely agree, Curry. It's such a layered situation and subject too, because you're talking about perspective, then you're talking about history, you're talking about data, and you're talking about coverage on social media with what is ungoverned. And you got a bunch of people, you could put whatever you want out there and put whatever narrative, and then it's like shoot first, ask questions later, and then you got the mass media too. So it's very layered. Everybody has been making great points. Audrey, we appreciate you bringing that up, because it is. I get frustrated when I see certain stories, and I may know a little more something about it than I'm seeing on an actual TV show. We try to bring it to the podcast or the radio show, like, nah, this is our perspective, but it's only one voice. So we appreciate these conversations because it's being had between the parties that people have sometimes just unfair biases to, which would be the law enforcement, and sometimes fair bias because we've seen some of these situations happen badly, and then we also having it with the community as well. Let's go ahead and roll into the next question. Unless anybody else wants to chime in on this topic right here, it's been kind of a hot topic, so we definitely don't want to breeze past it. Anybody? 5, 4.
Do we have any? I know we said we had some Morehouse students on here. Do they have a perspective? Any of them on here? Just ask.
Shout out to the Morehouse students.
Anybody? I know they someone was on here. Okay, we'll keep it.
Okay. We're going on to our third topic for today is when it says, do we get trained in dealing with mental health patients? It's talking about police officers. Do you guys get trained in dealing with mental health patients? If you're just jumping on, this is Clippers and Cops. We appreciate you guys coming on to this virtual event. We're trying to stay COVID free. And I'm Reese. I'm the host, not host, but moderator for the situation. I'm not a cop, radio personality. And
You're a
we
cop
got
too, fool.
we got some officers on here, including our panelists, Tyrone, Mike, two Mikes, this was said it twice, Curry, Finney, of course, Dre, Booker. Appreciate y'all. I hope I ain't miss anybody. I probably did. I'll catch you on the next shout out run around. Please, if you're just jumping on, raise your hand. Any lawyers? Yes, you're right, Megan. And lawyers. Okay, then. All right, attorneys. Need to talk to you afterwards. I don't have tickets. I got another situation. Got to talk to you about this afterwards. All right. Clarence has his hand up. Do you guys get trained in dealing with mental health patients? Been seeing a lot of that come up lately.
Yes, we do. We have the Memphis model of crisis intervention team, which is CI, stands for CIT. And we actually do mental health. We actually, it's almost like the police version. It's a calling. It's a calling to be a CIT officer because you got to really have a lot of patience and compassion to deal with the mental illness that goes on in our communities. And it gets addressed. We have moved really a long way to where we have what we call a care team that goes around and drive around. I know it's in Dallas. I know it's in Memphis. They drive around with a clinician and a nurse to make sure these people take their medication and to address their social issues. So yes, we do get trained at least. It's a 40-hour training and an 8-hour a year training as far as crisis intervention and medications, any new laws that come out. So we do get trained for that here.
So I may have missed this. Is this everyone in the precinct and your situation get trained, or is it just certain officers to get trained? And then when the dispatch happens, it's a mental health person, that person has to also come out.
Like I said, it was a calling for that particular officer who wants to step the role of being a CIT officer. Okay. So when a call goes out, if a call goes out to a residence or place that somebody has a history of mental illness, we will send 3 officers. One is going to be a CIT officer. He handles the scene. We have another as backup as well. So especially when you're talking about having weapons or anything like that, possibly going through a crisis. And I had to put that word in there. They go through crisis that somewhere they didn't take their medication or something else is going on. They're going through some kind of crisis. So they might break in the building and they might be just, you find them butt naked in the building and going through a crisis. And we go in there, we're not going to lock them up for breaking in the building because they're going through a crisis.
All right.
So this is where we come. Yeah, that right frame of mind.
I understand. I appreciate that, man. Didn't know that. Tyrone.
We have the same training and never have taken it. Like I told panel earlier, about as you mature as an officer, you learn how the people on your beat. Like I had a lot of homeless people who had mental illness, had drug abuse in their background, and you just learn each person. And I had a guy that was about 6'6", 200-something pounds, and when he was off, if he was high or off his meds, he'll be ready to fight if you want to. But I learned have a Snickers on the door in my patrol car, and when he off his, if you hear the call, you try to get there and be like, "Hey, I got it," and you talk to him, and he'll talk to you, and you give him a Snicker, and he's like a child. And I think for a lot of the officer or the beat officers, it comes with as you progress in your career, you learn the people on your beat. I ain't took no special training for it, although it's there. I didn't take any special training. It was just I wanted to have compassion for the people that's in their downs and they having a moment. You know what I'm saying? And as you learn those people learn you, and they basically look at you as a friend and different things like that. But on the flip side, I don't think it's no training that you can. When people were saying defund the police this summer, and they were saying they need to put a therapist with all the cops and stuff like that. That's all that sound in an ideal world, that'll be awesome. But who's paying for that? Because for anybody on this call that took therapy before, it ain't cheap. And it ain't cheap to put somebody with a therapist with every officer. And every call ain't a call for that. You know what I'm saying? So it's one of those things where it's good to have the crisis intervention units within the zones and different stuff like that, with people who kind of take a special need to do that. But that's not everywhere. Everybody don't have that.
I understand that, Ty. I appreciate that perspective. You just said something though. You said, hey, you need to have a mental health person with every officer, but then you also got a conversation on the flip side going defund the police. And when you talk about defunding the police, that doesn't mean a disbandment of a police enforcement. It just means that you got
Reallocate.
less resources and less money to do what you have to do. So I want to make sure that that narrative gets put out there too. Defunding the police. Go ahead.
Let me go back with you on that.
Yeah.
For some people, they really mean get rid of the police, like
Right.
totally, like we don't need
Right.
you.
Right.
Which nobody wants to live in the world of the purge, where every man for themselves, because it'll be like back in the way back when. Okay,
Right.
so that's not going to work. And when we say reallocate resources, that's great. But then, just like we're dealing with these active shooter situations, right? Who's going up in there bare bone without some tanks or some type of armor on, or you know what I'm saying? So it's almost like be careful what you wish for, because then when it comes back around, first thing we and say for example, if the guy in public yesterday decided to gun it out, right? Who going in there, right? They gonna say where the tank? They need to get that little tank thing they got and go up in there, right?
Right.
And so that's why it's like we have to be careful of what I get the narrative, defund the police, reallocate and all that. But some of the stuff we have it for a reason. You know what I'm saying? Even though it may not seem like we need it for a reason.
Right. I get what you're saying. Even though you're not the police anymore. I understand what you're saying. Let me go to Curry. Curry just had his hand up. Or maybe he did. Maybe that was from earlier. Okay, we can move on to the next subject. Y'all could jump in on this because I think we just got a subject that just came in from off the Facebook wire. Who just sent that message? Benny, was that you? With the flag message? Help me out, fellas. My phone.
Yeah. It's the flag.
Okay.
Mike has a video.
Go ahead, Mike. The St. Louis situation. Go ahead, Mike.
Yes.
Let's talk about it. Because that's where you at right now, right, Ty?
Been dealing with it since last week, my boy.
Okay, let's talk about that right now. Get everybody up to date. Mike, I think you have a video again. But Mike, go ahead and get everybody up to date. Or Ty, you can get everybody up to date what's going on with this situation.
Long story, because we running out, we only got like 20-some minutes left. Okay. Long story short, we had a baseball team. We have 4 high schools. One of the baseball teams decided to they wanted to honor our law enforcement and put the blue line flag on the back of their baseball hats and then put something on their jersey, right? At the time, it sounds awesome. But on the flip side, the blue line flag has been hijacked to be associated with other meanings such as white supremacy and different things like that. Right. So, and as a school district,
Black Lives Matter. You just
correct. So, as a school district, we couldn't allow them to put that on, because if we allowed them to put that on, we had to allow some. What if a student want to put a rainbow on? What if a student want to put BLM on there, and so forth and so on? Exactly. So we have to be fair. And once we decided not to allow them to put it on, all HE double hockey sticks broke loose.
Okay. So where do you guys land on that situation? Feel free to raise your hand. It is very unfortunate that support of the police has become equivocated with white supremacy. But we definitely want to chime in and talk about this situation too as a group. I'm sorry, Mike, you want to play the video first?
Play it, Mike. Play the video, Mike. He sleep. Either way it goes, it was my take on and just like
Can
To
you
me,
guys hear
Black
it?
Lives
Hey,
Matter was a cry
can you
for help.
guys, can you hear it?
We can't.
We can
It's
hear
just
you
a
now.
blank
You didn't
screen.
play it.
No, but can you hear
Yeah.
the story?
No.
No, it's not even playing.
Not playing on our side.
All right, hold on.
The line was
Come on
part of
now.
a patch on the hats of Eureka High School's baseball team. Tonight, the Rockwood School District has confiscated those.
Ashley Lincoln details the decision and how parents are reacting. Ashley?
Well, Courtney and Sam, we found out that these parents tell me majority of the team was on board with these hats. However, because of the current political climate and state rules, the school district says these hats have to go.
Eureka is a really strong community when it comes to military, their fire, their police, their EMS, everybody.
Eureka High School parents say these patches weren't meant to be political, but rather a show of support.
Give them the opportunity to represent and show their pride.
Monday, parents say school administrators confiscated these baseball hats with this logo of the American flag and colored lines representing support for military, firefighters, and police.
I think the baseball players were upset with that.
Kate Moore served as a firefighter for 20 years and has 2 children enrolled at Eureka High. She says the district could have handled this differently.
It's just the manner in which I think it was brought up.
Rockwood Superintendent Dr. Mark Miles sent this letter to parents stating not only do the patches go against policies from the National Federation of State High School Association, stating uniforms can't advocate for any political group or cause. He also says he received several complaints from parents regarding the blue line that represents law enforcement. News 4 found the imagery of the thin blue line dates back to the
All right.
So it's definitely some history behind the line within the flag. We see arguments on both sides where it's saying that the kids wanted to represent or be supportive of law enforcement and first response units and things of that nature, but it's also got history. So then you kind of get into that Confederate flag situation where it's like, are we supporting heritage or are we supporting inequality and racism and slavery and the unadvancement of certain people of color? So that situation happens in high school. You guys are open to jumping in on this conversation by raising your hand. If you can't raise your hand because you can't find a button like me, then you can go ahead and say and just speak up, or just raise your hand physically like this and we'll call on you. So Ty, I know you're right in the middle of it, so you may have a different perspective. And
my perspective on it from the start. I'm a 16-year retired police officer, and I feel like I'm a cop to the core. But that flag doesn't mean that much to me, to be honest with you. And like I said from the start, Colin Kaepernick kneeling wasn't about the flag. Black Lives Matter was a cry for help, and this wasn't about the flag, as we found out later on. I think people use some of these things with their agenda, and then they're really pushing something else. And at the end of the day, I feel like these kids, the district didn't say they can't wear a blue line t-shirt, hat to school. They saying they just can't put it on their uniform.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And that's because we got a strict generic rules in place to avoid it going off key. You know what I'm saying? Right. And I think when the situation happened, it blew my mind that it was blown that far out of proportion, because like I said, even being in law enforcement, that flag doesn't mean, it's not like I'm dying for that flag. Like, no, it doesn't mean that much to me.
Is that because of history, the historic meaning of the flag and the line and things like that?
No, it just doesn't. I never got involved in all that. Although I'm a cop, I don't think that I think my APD patch mean more to me than that flag. You know what I'm saying? Because that's something that I went through blood, sweat, and tears for. That flag is something that somebody else introduced and started saying that's just like gang banging. Like, if we change our colors up, okay, then that's what we riding with. Like that. That's why I don't associate with that.
Got you. That seemed like a cover up for something else.
I'll go in. I totally agree with Dennis. As I've mentioned on previous occasions, I've tried to join. Can y'all hear me?
You might turn your volume down or something, or you going through a different microphone or something.
Hello?
There you go.
Okay. Like in the past, I've tried several different law enforcement groups on social media, and I didn't last very long in those groups. And this back to blue, thin blue line thing, I mean, I think it's bullshit, me personally. Um, I think that you find a lot of people that use these flags and these, you know, different slogans and things of that nature for when it's politically expedient for them. I mean, because the moment you disagree with them about something, they'll turn their back on you. As we saw in the insurrection, the moment you stand against what their beliefs are, they'll kill you or they'll beat the crap out of you. You're ostracized for anything that doesn't stand with the police 100%. So I'm just like Dennis. I don't give much credence to these blue line matters things. I support my officers when they're right, and I support them, you know, when they're doing things the right way. But when you're wrong, no one should be ostracized for speaking up when somebody's wrong. And then when you get in some of these groups and you hear about how they talk about people, it's just disgusting. And you know, it makes it hard for you to put your backing behind people that believe what they believe. And that's just my opinion on it.
On that note, I do want to ask you something on that note. If you guys, maybe anybody has been in a Facebook situation or in a social media group involving other officers, and you see the kind of depiction that they think is okay, is there a way that you kind of point them or point somebody in the direction like, hey, bro, they talking like this over here. This could possibly end up being something else. You know what I'm saying? Or is it something that's just like, I'm gonna just get out of this and walk away from it?
I mean, unless you know department heads in their department, it's really not much you can do. But as you've seen in the Capitol riots, law enforcement officers, ex-military officers, all of them, they were involved in the insurrection.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, it's back to blue, but here you are on video beating the hell out of cops.
Yeah.
You know, and then you get politicians that come afterwards and says, we love the police. We would never do that. It had to be Democrats, or it had to be Antifa, or it had to be somebody else. It couldn't have been Trump-loving Republicans because we love police, and it's bullshit. People fall for it.
I appreciate that perspective, and that's why the question was asked. Anybody else want to chime in? I thought we was gonna get a Dre side today.
Yeah, I think we all look at a narrative and we try to figure out that narrative. I think that when we look at the flag, it represents certain things. And how do we look at that flag? And, you know, it was somebody had asked me, I went to actually my grandson's school talking about, they had Military Appreciation Day. And I went there and the teacher brought it up to me. She said, I want you to be able to, because I was wearing the uniform at the time. She said, I want you to be able to tell the students about kneeling when they, the national anthem or the flag and how, you know, she kind of said that was bad. Right. And I said, okay, I'll address it. So I went there and my whole spin was, I said, you know what? I fought for this country so that you can have the freedom to demonstrate and protest. But I also fought for it so you could do it in a peaceful manner, not being destructive and things. So if you decide to kneel, that's on you. I'm not going to kneel. But if you decide to kneel, I'm not going to judge you for kneeling. I might even put my hand on your shoulder because most people in the military who has the right mindset said, I fought for this country so that you can have the freedom to do the things that you can do respectfully. So when I saw the insurrection, that set me back because I felt like, okay, as a Black man, if this was Black Lives Matter, you would never got past those first set of barricades. Just being honest. You would have never got past those first sets of barricades. But how do you think, and privilege, okay, let's be real. White privilege is something that we all have to address and deal with based on entitlement. And so they felt that way to come in and do that. And then you sit there and being whatever party you decide to be. I'm bipartisan. It doesn't matter to me. But whatever party you sit there and you decide to be a part of and you allow that rhetoric, you are no better than the rest. Because you sit there and allow this to happen, planned procedure, and all these other stuff. I'm in the military. I know how that's supposed to work on both sides. You had the National Guard. You didn't want it was set up the way it was. And we as Americans ought to be ashamed. We ought to be ashamed of ourselves because everybody else around the world is looking at us now and said, y'all know better than anybody else. You play this role like you are, but you're not. You're not better than anybody else to allow this to happen. And we're going through this long, spending millions of dollars in trials and doing all this other stuff for situations. Same thing in law enforcement. What we look at in perception as a Black man or a person of color, law enforcement was different for us. We saw it differently than our white counterparts. Let's keep it real. We here in America, let's keep it real. Because we look at it differently because we were enslaved. And that was a way to suppress us by using law enforcement. Right. Because they said Jim Crow rules, Jim Crow law, who can enforce those laws? The legislation make those laws, and then what happened? The police follow them, and they make it however it goes. So let's look at the dialogue. Let's look at the thing. Just like Ty talked about the hat. Okay, for us, okay, it does not matter. But for some people, it represents something different, and they will do anything to get that point across, even if it's wrong.
And even if
that's the situation that we got to address.
Yeah, even if it's using the kids to do it, which is extremely trash to me when you think about it on that level. So I appreciate that perspective too. Robert, we're gonna roll over to you. Appreciate you waiting patient too. Need help unmuting? Mike, are you able to unmute him? See my guy Billy in here. What's up, man?
Yeah, I unmuted him. He should be up.
Okay, there you go. You unmuted.
There you go.
Okay, yes. I would just like to say, you know, I think you can trace this back to 2008 with the election of President Obama. For those of us in law enforcement, if you're on any mainstream law enforcement sites, a lot of the comments and the things you saw were very racist. They were disturbing, and people really showed their true colors then. And we saw a lot of our coworkers really expose themselves, and they really showed their true colors. So I think you can trace that back to 2008, basically, with the election of President Obama. And that's when it was really unmasked. And but I think a lot of us continue to soldier on because through it all, we know there's still a lot of people out there doing bad things to people. And, you know, we want to be a bulwark against that. But it's made it very hard at times to continue to soldier on. And one thing I would refer everybody to, there was a Pew study, P-E-W, Pew study that showed the divergence of thought between Black officers and white officers, how they feel about certain issues. So I would refer everybody to that Pew study that was done, and you'll see the divergence of thought of how Black officers and white officers feel about many key issues. So, you know, law enforcement is not a monolith. There's a lot of diversity of thought. So go to that Pew study and take a look at that.
Appreciate that. Thank you. We rounding out. We got about 7 more minutes left on this live Zoom. Appreciate everybody for tuning in with Clippers and Cops. Thank you guys for taking your time out to check out this episode. We do this monthly. It's usually the second or third Thursday in every month. Same time, same place since the COVID and the pandemic, or should I say pandemic? Those who know, not conspiracy theorists out there. We're always on Zoom, and you can catch it on Clippers and Cops on Facebook. Make sure you add us on all social media platforms too at Clippers and Cops. It's an R after the Clippers and Cops. Spell it all the way out the right way. Anybody else want to jump in on the situation before we close out, or have any closing remarks from the panel?
Can you read?
My closing remarks is, man, just for everybody on here, be the change you want to see in this world, not just law enforcement. And I live by those words, even in starting Clippers and Cops. It wasn't something that I asked for permission to do. I didn't ask anybody if I could do it or what not. I just did it. And like I say every month, to see it grow and to be able to touch as many states and people that we have, it's amazing. And then I think one of the questions in the chat, I don't know where that question came from. They asked, where are the white officers? And like I always say, I can't make people. I can bring everybody to the water. I can't make people drink it. And I don't know if people feel comfortable in coming on and being a part of that discussion as of yet. Hopefully over time. We've been doing this for 3 years, and we pretty much have some pop in, some pop out, different things like that. It don't mean that they don't necessarily care. I think some people just are not comfortable in this space having these type of conversations, just outside looking in. But at the same time, we're here and we continue to be here. And like we've said before, we're not getting paid to be here. We're taking time out of our lives to answer these questions and to be here to help give you some further insight on some of the stuff that's going on in our world today. And so we only hope to expand on it. And if you didn't speak this time and you feel like speaking next time, or you get the courage, or even if you just put something in the chat, we appreciate you, because this is how we learn. This is how, even as adults, we can continue to learn from each other to be the change that we want to see. Years ago, I don't think this was possible. You know what I'm saying? Just having all these different people on here. The pandemic has been a bonus to us, because now we're not just in, although I miss being in the barbershop, I think being on this Zoom allows people to be able to chime in their own space and different things like that. The energy in the barbershop was crazy, which I love, you know what I'm saying, just being face to face. But at some point we'll get that back. But right now, just to be able to meet each month, I'm always in Alabama right now, you know what I'm saying? I think Curry is probably in Madagascar somewhere, and everybody else is where they are. And we able to get on this same call and have conversation. That's awesome. So I appreciate everybody that's on here.
All right. And if you drop, feel free to drop your city in the group chat. I know we got people from Memphis checking in, St. Louis, Ferguson, Florida, just a lot of different places. Booker wants to be from Pittsburgh very badly. He got that up. So I appreciate everybody chiming in and chipping in.
Detroit.
Okay, Detroit checking in.
South Carolina, my man Charles Mitchell in the building.
I am from Pittsburgh, Reese. Quit hating.
You from Crenshaw Mafia.
All right. I heard all the big words too. My Georgia Tech guy too. I heard all the big words on your dissertation about the different subjects. I appreciate that too, man. One time for my guy Billy, man, he just checked in. It's good to see my guy, man. That's what's
He's
up.
from Boston. He's from Boston.
He's definitely from Boston.
Lashana Potts, Detroit.
Yeah.
Okay, Detroit
versus everybody.
Hey, that's Captain Potts to y'all, man. Y'all better put some respect on her name.
Captain Potts. Hey, Captain Potts.
So
sound like a boat captain.
Oh yeah, everybody headed to Atlanta for our Great Atlanta Shootout this weekend. A lot of law enforcement will be in town to play basketball. So
shout out
the Cab Knights,
man.
The Cab Knights, the defending 40 and over champs.
Shout out, shout out
out of here,
Cab
Clarence.
Knights, my guy Officer Rory. Oh, I'm sorry, Lieutenant, whatever he is now. I know he done moved all the way up the ranks now.
He like Captain Rory or something like that.
All right, for real. Memphis
Memphis is definitely in the building.
Y'all can get two what's the names, right?
What?
You can get 2 civilians, can't you?
You ain't a civilian, you a cop, Reese.
On that note, this live is over. Thanks, guys, for joining us. And I was like, definitely not, man. Me and JP coming, man. I got my guy Josh Powell in town. Me and him coming.
Hey, you ain't no cop, Reed. What do you say, Jay Reed? You ain't no cop.
I'm through with y'all, man. I'm through with y'all.
Y'all have a good week, good month. Everybody be safe, man. See something, say something. Be the change you want to see in this world. Make our world better, man. God bless y'all.
And
good night.
Let's keep politics out of policing, man.